Okay. So good evening, good morning, depending on whichever part of the world you are. And welcome to Vichaar 101. Uh, so it's almost like the fundamental, one of the fundamental life skills that we need to have to work with our thoughts, our emotions. And the tagline for today's session is how do we move from triggered reactions to grounded responses in a volatile world? And this is a work that I have been doing, I think, for the last 5 years. I've been offering, which are in different formats as a workshop series that was earlier 7 weeks of continuous intense work and slowly modularizing it into smaller packets. I think this is the second time I'm offering which are one-on-one in a very, like as short a session as possible, but coming from that essence of saying, this is important work. How do we take it to people? And my own journey, I think this is also why Vichar is very close to my heart, is it comes from my own journey of dealing with my mind, my thoughts and my emotions. And I have experienced that when my mind is my friend, it can be my greatest asset. It has enabled me to do a lot. Uh, Whatever I set my mind to, accomplish things. So it can be a huge asset. But I have also experienced the times when it has not been in my control, so to say. It has caused a lot of grief, whether it's in relationships with others, whether it's in my relationship with my own self, my sense of satisfaction, fulfillment in the world. Um, yeah, and a lot of just different aspects of life getting impacted. And this is a thought that was there from very early on because of these experiences that I had. I remember this evening, I was remembering that when I was in college, I was telling a very dear friend that I need to learn how to control my mind. And it was just coming from this place of knowing, of struggling with not having the tools to have that regulation switch in my hand. It seemed like things were pretty much in the control of my mind and not necessarily me. And yeah, I think my definition of this work has evolved over time. It's not necessarily about control, the way I think control also has different connotations, but in really saying, how can we understand who we are? Why do we have the thoughts we do? Why do we have the emotions that we do? And acknowledge that it's energy, it's pure play energy. And just like nuclear energy, any form of energy, nuclear energy is not good or bad. It depends on how you use it, how you channelize it. Energy is just energy. So likewise, the energy of our emotions, which is energy in motion, is emotion. That is just something which is neutral. And it's learning how to work with it, just like we work with the external world. How can we work with ourselves is what can make a shift in our lives. So yeah, just laying out this broad context for me, why this work has been very important. And what I'm going to invite us all, I think all of us have come here with some intention. So I will invite you into a little bit of grounding and getting in touch with that intention for yourself. So wherever you are, if you can, if you're in a seated position, just lean back a little, settle in. If you have a chair, just getting the support of the back of the chair. If you're standing, walking, then continue to do what you're doing, but just become more present, perhaps, to yourself. So when I say present to yourself, just notice your body at this point of time. From head to toe, doing a mental scan. Noticing your breath. Noticing any thoughts, any feelings that are alive right now. Maybe you're just coming out of something or going to step into something. So instead of pushing that away, just acknowledging that. And then parking it, putting it aside for the next 85 minutes. And I'm inviting you to join me for a few rounds of humming. So we'll purse our lips, make the sound. So breathe in, and as we breathe out, the M for mother sound is what we'll make. So just do a few rounds of humming like a bee at your pace. So breathing in. Mm. 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 Few more rounds. Mm. Mm. One last time. Keeping your attention inwards. Notice your breath now. Letting your body settle in. And just asking yourself what has brought you here. Could be something very general or something very specific, something that may be alive for you right now in life, or a general curiosity. Just becoming present to your intention. And gently, with a few blinks of the eyes, coming back into the space. And take your time. I'd love to uh, hear from you on chat. The chat box is open. If there's anything that you wish to share about your intention, it can be a word, a phrase. Just inviting responses on chat. What's bringing you here? How to focus? Says Sarab. Yeah. That scattered energy, 5 horses in 5 different directions means nowhere. When you focus it, there is a lot more velocity that can come in. How to be truly present. Yeah. Thank you. Nilofer says, acknowledging that I'm a work in progress and not to be judgmental. Yeah. About my beliefs and behaviors. And that's such a beautiful balance to have of saying, okay, there is work to do. And at the same time, having that compassion for ourselves as well, that non-judgmental attitude. Yeah. To the opportunity to learn that says more for you and who you are. Always a wonderful experience of the exploration of the mind. And I love that word that you're using, exploration of the mind, because just in that word, there is curiosity, there is openness, there's a very different energy to it. So I'm just also appreciating that. Thank you. I'll leave the chat box open for another half a minute. If something else is coming in. AM, who is just joining in. If you could rename yourself to add your name would be lovely. And we're just sharing our intentions for coming here. Okay. So on that note, on that sense of exploration, I'm going to start off for today. And let me share a brief uh, flow to our time together. So we'll start with sharing a little bit of this why. Why do this work? So you have grounded in your intention. I have shared why this work is personally important for me in my life. And also just what I want to do is bring in some additional context about how the world is today at large and what are limitations of some of our current typical approaches, limitations of reactions that we typically have to triggering situations. We will then move to spend some time actually saying, okay, how do I move to response? What does a response look like? How do I move to it? And there will be some time for you to reflect, because I think any learning becomes learning when we truly apply it in our life. So this session is going to have a lot of interaction. I'd love for you to, be engaged, respond, participate on chat, on audio, on video, whatever way you can. This is not a one-way thing. There's going to be a lot of reflection and interaction, because that's how we'll learn from each other. So let me get started a little bit with the current context, particularly in today's world, why this is even more challenging than what it has been in the past. Earlier, we were living in a largely stable world. So if I think of a tree is, as much as it is above the surface, it is also below the surface of the soil. And the roots are what give the stability to the tree. And we've had roots, deep roots, in all of these different dimensions of our life. Whether it is what we did, the profession that we had, typically we were engaged in something that our parents did, like we had seen that happening from childhood, and it was a natural thing to step into. We were stable and rooted in terms of where we were living. Again, there was a sense of family and community around. So there was a lot of stability that came from geographical location, its culture, the family that we were a part of, the traditions that it carried, the support that it provided, the broader community. Even things like religion and spirituality provided a lot of grounding for those turbulent times. And there are turbulent times. Like I think of, if there's a tree, if there are storms that come, it's the roots that hold it. And all of these were in some ways some of our roots that were holding us stable. Today, in general, the context has changed quite a bit. Today, we live in what anthropologists call a Bani world. Is there anyone who's heard this word, Bani? Bani world, Bani. Has someone heard? Yeah, Sarab. You had unmuted, yes.
I was going to say I've heard of VUCA word,
Yes,
but not a Bali word.
yes. You want to share the full form of VUCA?
Volatile, uncertain.
Yes.
Uh, I don't know what this. I can't recall what the C stands for. Maybe we could Google.
I think it's complex and ambiguous.
Complex and ambiguous. Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So the VUCA is the other term that's used. Bani is another term that's come in recently. And what it stands for essentially is these four things: brittle, anxious, non-linear, and incomprehensible. So it's a little bit of an acceleration of VUCA also, saying things can be broken very easily. That resilience is not there. That holds true in a lot of different aspects of life. There is anxiety. It's an anxious world. It is non-linear. So changes that are happening are very disruptive now. It is not step by step linear growth that we were used to seeing. And oftentimes it's just incomprehensible. There are things that we cannot understand, even in the world outside. Why are they happening? But they just seem to happen. This is the reality of the world that we live in. And if I were to look at this tree, how this is reflecting is at two levels. One is all of these. There is an element of choice that has come in now. in some ways, earlier these decisions were made for us, right? You do what your parents did, you get married to someone from the same community, you settle in the same locality or somewhere, close by into your, this other family that you go into. There is a set of beliefs. All of that was set. And today, each of these has become a choice for us. And while choice is great, it opens up freedom. It actually enables us to choose what is right for us. It also means acknowledging that we don't have the stability and we're constantly trying to figure out, learn, optimize, and see what works for us. In terms of the external environment, there are things like artificial intelligence. Suddenly, it's non-linear. It's completely disruptive, right? Jobs that we thought were stable suddenly are now becoming redundant. It's challenging status quo. COVID itself was one of the big disruptors, something that we could rely on, just having oxygen, literally something as simple as that. When we are not in control of our own bodies and having this massive fear of losing so many people, our loved ones, COVID was completely non-linear, created a lot of anxiety, was incomprehensible also. Social media does its own damage. I think people are now beginning to, in some countries, see why do children less than 16 years need to be exposed to it, because again, it exposes us to a lot that is very triggering. And things like economy, with global economies, so much connectivity, but there's also a lot of instability that comes. So this is some general context. I would love to hear from you as just maybe taking a moment to reflect on this. How does Bani play out in your life? When you see some of these things, what's resonating for you? What else is coming up for you that makes you see that the world is constantly changing, your outer and your inner? So yeah, you can unmute and or put on chat box. Anxiety related to climate crisis. Yeah, Pankuri, thank you so much. That's another one that's causing anxiety, right? Like for kids to grow up in a world where we don't know how things will be 50 years from now. Like it's leading to very different kinds of behaviors. For some, there is anxiety, and some are like, you live life only once, let me maximize. I don't know how long this world is gonna last. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up.
And also, like, I was speaking to somebody about the high AQI levels in Delhi, like the pollution in Delhi. And growing up, and I know, Garima, like, we studied together in Delhi, and it was never a concern for us. I don't remember even, forget like our early years, but even 15 years ago, like when we were in college together, we never talked about pollution or the high AQI. And now it's such a big thing,
So true.
for people living in Delhi NCR.
So true. Absolutely. Like people are having to displace, and one of our good friends has done that, right?
Yes,
Just having
yes,
to move her entire family out to a different city. And you know that in the other city also, you have maybe 10, 15 years, and then there is going to be perhaps a similar reality there. So, yeah.
yeah.
Milan talks of loss of personal purpose in part due to a sense of helplessness. Yeah. Milan, I'm curious to hear about that sense of helplessness. Like what I'm tapping into when I see that helplessness is also systems are so large, so complex. And so, what can I as an individual do? You become like a cog in the wheel, and that contributes to my sense of helplessness. Would love to hear from you.
Yeah, exactly. Especially after these U.S. elections, and thinking that this is, 50% of a population does not value character. And, then I come back to my day-to-day life and I think like, are we, you know, can I actually make a difference or can I contribute? And I know, yes, on a micro level, of course,
Mm,
I continue to strive to improve my own character. But sometimes it's this sense of, what am I doing at these work meetings and attending these things, or, and sometimes even being on the children all the time to be off their devices, or these constant battles. And I think, is it going to matter when I continue to do this every day? Is it going to change the outcome in 2 years?
yeah.
It's trying to remember that. And that's one of the reasons I'm here this morning.
Yeah.
It's been a
Thank
particularly
you.
tough week.
Thank you for sharing that. One of my friends in the US, she literally lost her voice. She's been unable to speak for a few days. And it's that body is reflecting what the mind and the emotions are doing. Yeah. And all of these fears that are coming up within us, right, which are threatening our sense of security, stability in the world around. Our system, what it does is our system is also hardwired in a particular way. We have been living this kind of an urbanized, civilized life only for the last couple of 100 or 1,000 years. It really hasn't been our engineering and our way of living for the longest time. And so what happens is, what kicks in is our fight, flight, and freeze response. So if we were, imagine ourselves to be like living in the jungles, which is where we've lived for billions, millions and billions of years. If a lion came in front of you, what would be the options, right? If you were feeling strong enough, felt a sense of power, you would fight it. If not that, you would run. That is the flight. And like for me, I'm recalling visuals from Nat Geo and other channels where finally when the prey gets caught and you have no choice, the prey often, if you've seen, it just sort of becomes lifeless. It freezes because that's the only way to numb out all the pain. Sometimes that happens when there is no other option. Sometimes that happens like even in, for example, if a bear comes, what do? You just numb yourself out. You just freeze, don't move. Because that also then perhaps signals to the animal that, and then the animal moves on. So these are the three mechanisms that are built in to in our reptilian mind. They're in the structure of our being. And we will either fight, we will flight, or we will freeze. And what happens is when we are working from an ungrounded state of being, what ends up happening is a trigger comes. Typically, we have a choice. We can either react or respond. When we haven't processed our emotions, our thoughts, and dealt with them in a more constructive manner, we often end up reacting and not responding. Just like this reaction is part of our makeup, of our reptilian brain, we all are also hardwired with the ability to respond. We are not just animals, we are human beings. We have a neocortex. We have a fully developed, rational thinking, analytical brain that has also created so many mechanisms for safety, which are beyond reactions. But what I want to do is I want to delve a little bit into some of these reactions. So the context has changed now. We are no longer in jungles, but the reactions remain pretty much the same. So what I'm going to share is I'm going to briefly share what these fight, flight, freeze look like. And as you're listening to these, as you're reading these, just check in with yourself and maybe remember and try to recall when in your life have you applied that. So the first one, fight reaction, is when we engage with the situation, right? Or the person with a counter attack through our words or through our actions. So it's characterized by rage, anger, irritation, frustration. There are different degrees. It need not always be rage. It might just be minor irritation. But the key thing is you're moving towards the trigger. And what's prompting that movement away towards the trigger is that I feel like I can address the trigger. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to engage with it. Now, we don't have those animals anymore, but what happens to fight against, but what happens is we can be disagreeing. We can get into counter arguing, fighting with others, seeing that it's only our point of view that's the right view, and saying, I am going to slice you and show that this is my truth. We can get into justifying ourselves, defending ourselves, trying to explain, here's what I did, all of that. We can also get into patterns of blaming where we're trying to show the other person, what did you do incorrectly, right? How have you caused this? Or sometimes this fight energy can get directed internally also. We could be upset with ourselves for thinking or feeling in a certain way. So I'm fighting my own thoughts. Someone had talked of non-judgmental, right? So when you're judging, There's some of that fight energy directed towards ourselves. So just take a moment. I'll show all three, and that's when after that we'll engage with this. Take a moment to read this or reflect. The next one is a flight reaction. So flight is when you're actually running away. You're physically or mentally moving away from the situation. So there is panic, fear, anxiety, worry, concern, some shade of this. There's a movement away from the trigger, but it's still coming from a feeling of I can. That the way to get to safety is to consciously disengage from it. So the way it shows up in our current lives is that sometimes you just even physically move out of the situation, say, hey, I don't want to be in the same room as you. Let me just walk out right now and get some breath of like fresh air maybe. Sometimes we may ask the other person to be removed, right? Saying that, with a team member, saying this person, it's not working out. Like I need for that person to be removed away. We could be denying the issue. So flight from the situation itself. Engaging in distractions. I think this is very, very common. Work can be a distraction from home. Home can be a distraction from work. A lot of our addiction to TV, mobile phones, all of that is also a flight away from other painful things to look at. So there's that energy of delay dealing with it, right? That's what happens in flight. You're moving away, but that still comes from this energy of I can. What's the point of engaging in this debate? Let me just move away. This person will not understand, or there is no point. This has happened over and over again, and let me move away. So again, just taking a moment to see where in your life might flight be playing out.
Some of these, are they necessarily bad?
We'll come to that. We'll come to that. Hold
Okay.
that thought. Right now, just identify कि ये कभी हुआ है क्या life में? Has this happened? Yeah. Procrastination. Yes. Procrastination. Pankhuri says that. That is also from a flight. Like I'm not able to engage with it. I need to do, I know the deadline is coming and I need to do that work, but I'm just not able to get myself to do it. Feels like, okay, let me rest. Maybe something will come. The third one is freeze. In freeze, what happens is we are actually unable to say or do anything. There's an overwhelm. There's a numbness. As I'm thinking about this, that loss of voice that I was speaking about, right? That could also be a freeze, like the throat has physically frozen. What is important here is that these are two seemingly opposite things. Numbness is when you're not feeling anything. Overwhelm is when you're feeling everything. So it's almost like this is a freezing and this is like overwhelm is a melting. But we still put them in the same category. The kind of things that will come up is dissociation, numbness, getting into a sense of depression, helplessness, shame, hopelessness, feeling trapped, there's nothing I can do. So we have still moved away from the trigger, but the underlying thing is it's coming from an I can't. That's where the hopelessness comes in. That's why the helplessness comes in. Right? That I cannot address this situation. I need to think of something, but I'm literally frozen. I just can't think. I don't know what to do. So some of the examples of freeze behavior, like I said, these are seemingly opposite states of numbness or overwhelm. But the common thing is the inability to do or say anything. So not able to take action, not able to defend ourselves. In that conversation, we may not be able to do anything. Later on, maybe a day, week, months later, we might be like, oh, this is what I should have said. Why was I not able to explain this in the moment? So that sense of silence, feeling stuck, confused, numb, blank, just staying in that same loop, replaying the same thing over and over and over again, and getting into this dull, gloomy, feeling like a victim phase. So again, just take some moments to let this in. Okay, so as you hear these fight, flight, freeze, I'm curious what's coming up for you. What are you connecting with? What questions are coming up? What reflections are there?
Is the freeze coming out of a sense of shock?
It could. It could, yeah. And the sense of shock, again, like typically in the animal kingdom, there is that hierarchy. When the shock also comes, even if a lion is suddenly startled by an animal, it being powerful will try to fight. The next option for the animal is going to try to run, flight. Freeze is typically the last option because it's coming from that sense of I can't do anything about it.
Hi, Garima.
Hi,
Garima,
Pooja. Yes.
my thought is, I think at least I get into freeze or maybe so-called numbness phase is I feel that the time will actually take care of it. So my anger, my whatever strong emotions are there, it will subside. And then maybe I am able to deal with it rationally. I think that's how I look at it.
Yes. Beautiful. Beautiful. And I think you're also answering some of what Sarab is saying, that each of these reactions is built in with a purpose. Right? The purpose, each reaction is trying to serve a purpose. So for you, for example, the freeze is serving the purpose of giving you some time to actually soak this in, figure out the right solution, and then come back. So reactions are designed for a reason, and that's what I want to invite you to do. Maybe take a few moments. If you have a pen, paper, great. Otherwise, just reflect on this for yourself. Sarab talks of different reactions depending on situations and counterparties. Yes, we often, it's not like we are bucketed into one of these three categories. We are likely to have all three reactions in different situations. Sometime in the same situation, we may cycle through fight, flight, freeze at different points of time. But generally, if you can see for some area, some aspect of your life, what is your common pattern of reaction? And take a few moments to reflect on how does the pattern support you and how does it not support you. So we'll keep silence for a minute and reflect on these questions. I'd love to hear how many fight primaries do we have over here. If you could just raise your hands or show a thumbs up. Who are the fighters here? No fight? Not possible. Typically, fight, I've seen it being the majority. But this is interesting. Ah, yes. With age and maturity, things may change. Pooja, you gave a thumbs up. So do you identify a fight in you from time to time?
I think fight and freeze are, I think, are dominant, I think.
Okay. So can you share how do you feel the fight helps you and where does it not help?
I think fight helps me to put my point forward, though not in a very subtle manner, but I think it helps me to put my point across. And freeze, as I said earlier, gives me time when I think the emotions are running very strong in my mind and body.
Yeah.
Then I just want to just give it some time to settle down and then maybe react or do anything about it. So till that time, I just keep it blocked.
Great. And can you also share, I think you've talked a little bit about this, but if you can elaborate on when do you see these not supporting? So like fight, you said it's not that subtle, right? When I express that. So what is that? what is the downside of a fight and freeze?
I think a very big downside is like even the right things don't seem right when I think you do it in a fight manner.
Hmm.
I think that's a
Yeah.
very big no-no. Uh, I think that's where I feel my emotions are not in control. So even if I'm doing the right things or am I saying the right things, it doesn't come across as the right thing.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I've noticed that like the words that I've said in some of those moments have damaged and have stayed with people. And I'm like, Arey, why don't you listen to like what about 99% of the times when I was not in that zone? But just that one time I said that I lost my cool but I genuinely felt that it just has been very damaging. Huh.
Yeah.
Akshat, you had unmuted something you wanted to share?
No, I was trying to figure out how to get the raise hand thing on the mobile, but yes, I've seen myself do all three actually, depending on situations.
Hmm.
So I'm definitely fight, sorry, at times.
Hmm.
But then what I've also seen is that with the same people where do get triggered and go go into fight mode, I've now kind of seen myself more recently go into freeze mode, but
Hmm.
that's not from a freeze of I can't do anything. I just feel like, one of the bullet points said, there's no point. I've done this over and over again, what you mentioned. So I could relate to that.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like no point. So just leave it. And I think one of the other participants said, that I can deal with this later in a better way. So
Yes.
it's a mix actually. I think I agree with you when you say that you're capable of all three.
Hmm.
And someone in the chat box wrote that, different people, different scenarios, you use all three. So
Yeah.
I don't think there's a one size fits all.
Absolutely. Like these are like the three primary colors, RGB, and you use them to make lots of different colors and shades, and it's not like one is predominant at doesn't have to be. So yeah, just also recognizing that complexity. Um, would love to hear from someone who is in the flight bucket. How has it helped and how does it not help? I think we know a little bit about moving away, like that's been said that it gives that space. How does it not help to disengage?
I'm definitely in the flight bucket tendency for most of my life, and it helps because I think, as my wife says, "Oh, people just think you're a nice guy. You don't get in trouble." The downside, of course, you don't build relationships, and
Hmm.
sometimes you don't challenge yourself to grow because it's seen as an easy way out.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's something but then challenge, where I look forward to hearing is what are the options.
Yeah. I think what you shared is also a very powerful reflection. Piyush, I'll come to you also, but I want to reflect back what you said is when we're in a in that pattern, it seems we come across as very pleasing personalities and, taking care of everyone, not hurting others. But like what you said, it actually comes in the way of strong relationships getting built because relationships get built when you work through the difficult stuff instead of, brushing it aside. That is what actually leads to true strength of relationships. And the other thing I heard you say is it comes in the way of our own growth and of our own expression of who we truly are. So thank you for sharing that. Piyush.
Yeah, no, it's the same thing with me. More of a pleasing personality, trying to please others and not getting into conflicts.
Huh.
And I think in the short term, it works because you avoid that conflict. But in the long term, it does not work because you are carrying a lot of baggage in your mind and you're not resolving those issues. And strong relationships are not getting built.
Yeah. That's very important because on the surface, like you're saying, it seems like everything is peaceful, but in the mind, it's still going on. It's not resolved. And so the fight is persisting here. It may not show up in the actions. We're still engaged. And I think what's also now beginning to come up in this conversation is now we started using personality. So what is personality? Personality is a typical pattern of behavior that gets created. And that's how people start knowing us, right? People will look at Garima, typically they'll be like, she's a very hardworking person. She will give her best to whatever she does, right? Piyush is like someone who is taking care of everyone, taking relationships alongside, takes care of others. That may be a perception. So, but what is interesting is These patterns of personality are basically these patterns of behaviors. And beneath them, if you're not aware, every personality pattern is helpful. It gets created because it has helped us. That's why it gets created. But if we're not aware, if we're not conscious, and Sarab was talking about it, as age goes by and we realize our own behavior patterns are coming in the way of our truest growth also. So what may start off as someone who's very dedicated to work may become a workaholic, and that just becomes the only mechanism. So when you think of workaholic, what do you think? What is it? A workaholic would be a fight or a flight or a freeze. What comes to mind?
It could be any of these three.
Huh.
So sometimes people keep working to avoid tackling the real issues because that's a way for them to get distracted
Yes.
and not address the real issue. So it's a flight. Sometimes it's fight. I think, they just want to overcome a certain obstacle, and the desire to overcome that obstacle is so high that they
Yes.
are continuously at it. So in my view, it could be any of these responses.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Yes. I think that's what the chat is also indicating. So now I think I love, like, we're beginning to see the nuances of these. Okay, we cannot look at a behavior, the person will know. And oftentimes that also requires deeper introspection to see what am I really fighting? What am I running away from? Where am I feeling helpless? But it's some shade of these three that is playing out in all of the different personality patterns. A pleasing personality, an angry personality, a workaholic personality, like you name it. Personalities are patterns of behavior. And it's just, I would invite us as we step out of this session today to start examining what are these adjectives that I associate with myself, that people associate with me. They've formed for a reason, but are there places in which they're holding me back from my truest potential? So what I want to share here is all of these. We talked of behaviors, reactions, and how they become personalities. Firstly, acknowledging that it is natural to have this impulse to react. All of you are saying that they help in the short term. Why do they help? Because they help us survive. They help us make our way through difficult situations in life. So it's natural. But this challenge, right? This challenge of saying, I want to move away from just long-term attachment to that reaction is an opportunity. It's coming across as a challenge, but in the challenge lies the opportunity to say, how do I grow? How do I grow into a more expansive personality who has choices, right? Who knows what to use when? I'm not compulsively becoming a certain person. To grow and to thrive, not just repeating old patterns and being in the survival mode. So that's what the invitation for today's session is, for us to say, what are some patterns that we've been repeating? Maybe it's time to revisit them, see what else I might want to try, and move out from surviving to truly thriving. Whether it's healthy relationships, whether it's expression of who we are, our potential, all of that. So coming back to this choice, we had seen reaction, and Milan was also talking of what is a choice, right? So the choice is to respond. Let me just share a few characteristics of what a response may look like. And again, I invite you to look in your life, because each of us, just like we have reacted, we have all also responded consciously. At some point of time, every day, we do this. So let me maybe first share the difference. Reaction is fight, flight, freeze. The difference between a reaction and a response: in a response, there is a state of being grounded. We are in the present. There's curiosity, joy, openness, compassion, mindfulness. There's a sense of connection, connectivity to ourselves, what's happening to me, connectivity to the other. So that's the orientation also to the environment, that we're truly present, right? Sarab, you talked of being present. So when we're in a responsive state, we are actually present to the outer reality and to the inner reality. And we're not operating from fear, because fear is what triggers reactions. There is a sense of safety. And when the safety comes is when our defensive responses automatically go down. A great indicator of this is just physically. The more you tune into the sensations in the body, physically there is ease. And I'll come to these three words later, but there's a state of courage, compassion, and gratitude. We'll spend a lot of time on these three words. So in essence, response is a state of optimal arousal. It's not saying nothing will impact us and I'm going to become stoic and I'm going to become like ekdam aisa, nothing impacts me. It's optimal arousal. Whatever is, our response is proportionate to the situation at hand. It's not excessively more. It's not excessively less. It is proportionate to the situation at hand. And like I said, each of us have been in this kind of a situation. We have all responded where maybe something was triggering, but we came back to ourselves, saw the whole picture, and maybe came up with a win-win solution, something that took care of us, something that took care of the other. So what happens is when we're in the state of respond, what was becoming fight, flight, freeze here becomes, instead of fight, I'm addressing the situation. So I'm still keeping the positive of fight, which is it helps me state my voice and address something. But that energy of fear, defensiveness, all of that attacking is not there. Instead of flight, like Piyush was talking about, like I may move away from it, but it may still be active in my mind. You are truly letting go. And our mind will reflect that. Right? We will know the difference. Are we in a flight mode or have we truly let go? And Pooja, what you were talking of a freeze, when there is that responsive freeze, when it's coming from a conscious choice, it's not like I'm frozen out of a sense of helplessness and I can't do. It's a conscious choice. Let me take my time and I will come back to it. And you do come back to it. We don't get stuck in these states. So inviting each of you to reflect on this difference, on when and how you have done this responding in life.
So, I'll just kind of share. I am a very conflict averse person. Okay, so when you are a conflict averse person, so that whole avoidance comes into play very quickly, right? So I've gone through that, and you have multiple things. You realize that you are not responding, you are reacting, because you don't like it. It is unpleasant, deeply unpleasant. So fight rarely happens. So either it is flight or it is freeze. And then you start, that is probably we were talking at the beginning of it, is the age teaches you things. So then you realize that sometimes you have to fight, like getting something done from people in Delhi. You just can't get it done with pleasant conversation. Okay, suddenly you realize that, sorry, I'm kind of generalizing, but it is so true. Sometimes I experience that. So you have to do a little bit of, but it is responding. I know that I am not really fighting the person. That person expects me to behave in a particular way before that person agrees to do something. So I have to just do that. It is practically play acting. I am just acting. That is, I have to just do this acting. Otherwise, I am not that person. I hate to be that person. But unless I do it a little bit, hoga nahi. So you have to do that. So one of my ex-bosses told me very nicely that you should never get angry, but you can act angry. So there is a very different thing. In angry, you have lost control of your mind. In act angry, you are actually in control of the situation.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Like you're
So
actually repeating like what my meditation teacher also told me when I asked him, do you get angry? He's like, sometimes that's the way to get things done. And I put that on. Yeah.
so sometimes you have to just do that. The flight used to happen uh, because of that. That means you just say, I want to get away from this situation. So from that and freezing, quite obviously that you just walk away or you just do not respond. I am just started probably some time ago. I do not know when, but just started to say that uh, because usually what happens is that any topic being discussed or anything being talked, given, as you said, exploration of mind, that is my nature, I will think 24 different perspectives of the same thing. Okay.
Yes.
And that stops you from from even responding, because there is so many things going in your head about a very simple thing to the other person. And I don't blame the other person. That is the way my mind is. So from that, I kind of now started saying that I do not like to react. I usually take time to please allow me to come back by tomorrow, or give me a couple of days for me to come back to you. Let me think over it and come back. That is the way I do, because there is a lot of what should I say? That means a lot of value is given to people immediate reacting.
Yes.
And I don't know why. There are few things that is funny these days. A lot of value given. One is instant reaction, and I can't understand why there is any value to that. Okay, that means other than when a Bradley bowling a ball at you and you have to react, otherwise you will get killed. I find no other reason to react quickly in a meeting or in a conversation. So that is one thing. Another is that people get these days very and people want that because people say that they have a very short attention span, and that is supposedly a very good thing. And I said, how can it be a good thing? That means having deep attention is a good thing. Okay, that means, but somehow anyway.
Yeah.
So this is the way I have started kind of telling, and I started using it in conversations, that I do not like to react instantly. I hear you. Please do not think that I am ignoring the conversation, but I'm hearing you. Please allow me to come back in tomorrow or a couple of days, because there was no value in just reacting by running away or by freezing. That I realized over a period of time.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing this. I mean, there's so much in what you said. One of the things that I'm picking up is just providing time and space, because what happens in that instant reaction is no one gets time and space to actually process, and you're creating that's when a response can emerge. What's also beautiful is the way you're creating that time and space. Also, it can get created from an energy of fight, let's say, right? You're not giving me time, I need some time. But you're not doing it like that. You're actually doing it with an energy of response. This is my need. I need some time, The other person can get triggered. Our lack of response, now we're all living in a triggered Bani world. So you're also taking care of the other person and their needs, their reactions, and approaching it in a way that don't think that I'm not going to address it. So what happens is that also calms the other person down. And I think, Pankhuri, you were also talking about this somewhere on chat, that for the other person, how do they respond? So it's also important to acknowledge that just like we are operating from our fears, the other person is also operating from fears. And if we can just acknowledge that, meet that, and that also gets people out from that fight, flight, freeze mode many, many times. Finally, everyone just wants to feel understood, cared for. Like, we are all coming down to those very human needs. We may not agree, but if I'm able to convey to the other, I hear you, right? That. It creates a very different field in which then the responsiveness happens.
But sometimes if they're in the reaction mode, for example, and if they're in a flight mode or a freeze mode, then they don't want to be acknowledged. They don't want to hear. There is that barrier.
Yes.
Nothing like one can't do anything
Yeah.
unless, besides giving them time, I guess.
Absolutely, absolutely. And just that time itself, they may or may not come back to that grounded state, but the choice that we have is what can I do about my emotions, my reactions, my thoughts. And the more grounded I can be, I'll make a choice. Right? That at least I can live with the consequences of that choice and not regret that later, because the only person who lives with our choices is us also. So what I want to share here, I think some of you, I'm hearing this implicitly, but I want to start putting some names, some words to this. What I want to share is, see, I'm right now just talking about the tip of the iceberg, the behavior. There is a whole massive iceberg beneath that. And our behavior comes from our thoughts and emotions. Our thoughts and emotions come from underlying needs, beliefs, values. Beneath that, there is a whole layer of fears that is sitting. That, I think, itself is a huge, it's an exploration in itself. I'm not doing that right now for the lack of time. But what I want to share is 3 attitudes or 3 like lenses with which to see the world. If we can cultivate those 3 lenses can help us come from reactions to responsiveness. So I'll share those 3 and again see what calls out to you, where you are at as well. So these 3 attitudes, so this is called inner alchemy. The alchemy is converting, the process of converting something that isn't very valuable into very valuable things. So to convert outer obstacles, outer triggers, outer conflicts, or maybe inner conflicts into opportunities. I'm just going to mute everyone. I'm hearing some noise in the background, but please feel free to unmute later. So the 3 attitudes, the short form, the acronym is CCG, 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 courage, compassion, and gratitude. The first one, courage, is to turn the lens inwards. Is saying, I'm only looking at the world outside and what the other person has said and what I need to do. Can I actually turn the lens inwards? Can I look within myself, within the other person also? Can I look inside and acknowledge that each of us is bringing in some unhelpful patterns that are contributing to the present situation? In Hindi, there is a what we call a muhavra, tali do hath se bajti, ek hath se nahi bajti. It takes 2 hands to clap, right? So it means acknowledging both are bringing in some compulsive patterns, reactions, behaviors, personalities. And in different situations, courage may look different. If you are stuck in a situation where you're only seeing what the other person is not doing, they owe this to you, maybe, oftentimes it happens in relationships, like this is what my spouse is expected to do. This is what they've signed up for by being married. So till the time I'm stuck in what the other person is not doing, here courage may actually mean what am I doing that's contributing to it. If you're stuck in the opposite, which is blaming yourself, digging a hole, a big pit and falling into it, and that self-blame is happening, maybe it will be helpful to acknowledge that the other person has also contributed to it, because that is the whole fact. So what are each person's unhelpful patterns contributing to the situation? And that takes courage. Why does it take courage? Because you have to, this whole compulsive behavior that wants to happen, you have to say, I want to pause. I will not react. I'm going to pause. And instead of focusing my energy outwards on the surface, I am going to direct this energy inwards. That takes courage. So it's actually courage and restraint in some ways, not the courage of going out and doing something, the restraint to look within. The second one is compassion. I release narrow judgments. One of you talked of judgments, right? So I release narrow judgments to see the whole truth. The whole truth for myself and for the other. So what will happen is when courage is there, we will start seeing what are my unhelpful patterns? What are the person's unhelpful patterns? compassion is saying, yes, those patterns exist, but there is a truth beyond those judgments, those narrow judgments also. My pattern, yes, is not helpful, but it's been there for a reason. So you can, that's one way to look at it for yourself, for the other person. That this is what they're doing, but maybe that's the intention, like they're coming from a different intention. Sometimes it helps to go back to our origin, our conditioning, and say, hey, this is how your life has been. And so this pattern got developed. And just being able to see it again with open-mindedness. And oftentimes compassion is about expanding our point of view, of saying, I have a fixed notion about me or about another person. Can I see that that is not the only truth? The opposite of what I believe is also true. Just like we're seeing for ourselves, we are not just red or blue or green. We are all the colors. Compassion is about acknowledging all of those colors in others, in ourselves also. So that's what compassion does. Before going to gratitude, I want to pause here why courage and compassion together are important. If I was to, in a consultant style, make a 2x2 grid, one axis is you and the other person, right? Who's the person? Me and the other, that's one axis. The other is what is unhelpful, so that courage to see, and that compassion, to have some compassion. So the positive and the negative or whatever in some form. The complete truth is the other person is doing something that is contributing to it, and I can see them with compassion, that it happened for a reason. There is perhaps a positive intention, or it's a pattern that got formed for a reason. They have their best interest at heart. All of those are compassion. There's courage to see my role in the situation and courage to have compassion for myself and say, this is not the only truth. There are other perspectives also. I am not always XYZ. I am also the opposite. So this is the whole truth. This is the full truth. And so we were talking of overthinking. So if you have to direct our thinking of overthinking, our pattern of overthinking, this is one way to direct the energy of saying, what is this full truth? This, that is the full truth. And only then when we have expanded, if you remember in response, what was written in the description was you are oriented, right? There is a sense of orientation. This is what we want to orient ourselves to. This is the situation in its entirety. Now, what's the next step that I take? That's where the energy of gratitude can come in. And gratitude, oftentimes we say it's be grateful for the things you have, things that are going well. Here I take another interpretation of gratitude, of saying that life is happening for me. It's not happening to me. Situations, people, I'm not getting attacked by them. It's actually happening for me. Why? Because challenges are opportunities to grow. Challenges can be opportunities to discover new possibilities. And these new possibilities can be within ourselves. Hey, I need not always be a pleasing person. I can actually stand up and voice what is important to me. Or I may not always need to be confrontational. I have an opportunity to grow. And we can also discover new possibilities about the other. We may believe that the other is in black and white, only XYZ kind of a person. But this is saying, oh, maybe they also have, like us, right? They can also be something else, someone else. Can I believe that and see that possibility in them as well? So this life is happening for me versus to me. It's irrespective of what your religious, spiritual belief is. You may believe there is a higher order, design, universe is doing something. It's happening for me. Great. If you don't believe in that, it doesn't matter, because life is what you choose to make out of the experiences. And gratitude is just the lens of saying anything challenging, any trigger is an opportunity to see, I need to work on something. The other has an opportunity. They may or may not take it, but I certainly have a choice of what I want to do with this. So with whatever is coming up for you, I want to invite you into a reflection of saying, from these three, what is typically your strength? How has it been helpful for you? So take a few moments. We'll keep silence. take a minute or so. Which of these is your strength? How has it helped you in your life? And a few more moments. Okay. Would love to hear some reflections. Anyone wants to share about courage? Piyush?
Yeah, so I would say that has been one of my strengths. And actually, as I was reflecting on it, there's a paradox in there. So I have found courage to do different things, to take risks. I have also been very courageous to be very honest with myself in terms of, what are my areas of development, what are my key strengths.
Mm.
Ironically, one of my key areas of development is courage itself. So, so that's the paradox there, that I have taken risks, and I know that I am capable of taking that risk. I am capable of taking those challenges. So that has been my strength. But at the same time, one of the key areas that I'm focusing on is actually building my courage.
Beautiful. And I'm inviting you, and maybe you weren't prepared for this, but a question that's coming up is, if you were to add compassion for this, for yourself, what might be a compassionate view when you look at, this is my area of development, I don't have enough courage? When that thing comes up, what's a compassionate view of it?
Yeah, so that is the other thing that I'm working on, to be much more compassionate to myself, because one of the things that has happened is that I have beaten down myself quite a lot on different things. So it has happened in the past, but more and more as I am becoming more mature, I am becoming more and more compassionate towards myself.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And I identify so much with what you were saying, because like I've done that. My courage has been my strength, helped me do a lot externally, but yeah, I've used it to beat myself up and down and all of that. And in some ways it was a pattern, because I thought that the more stricter I am with myself, the higher expectations I hold, the more I will improve. But it has, over time, just learning that the more compassionate we are also, that actually accelerates the process of change. And like even scientifically, it's proven that this oxytocin, like the love hormone, in some ways, when we operate from the space of compassion, that is what softens the neural pathways. That is actually what enables change. So when I started appreciating, there's a whole science, there's a whole field called appreciative inquiry. Instead of saying what is wrong, what's broken, what needs to get fixed, and being fixated with it, use that energy of courage to identify. But if you start, when we start appreciating what's working well, how can I do more of this? That makes the work happen in a very accelerated way, because there is that energy of joy and compassion. So yeah, thank you for sharing.
Yeah, good point. Thanks.
Yeah. Other reflections? Sudeep, I'll come to you, but I'm also curious if someone else wants to share something on compassion, something on gratitude. How has this worked for you? Hi, Amrita. Yes.
Hi.
Good to see you.
So thanks for your time. And while I was thinking, I found it really funny to go back and think about it. But I happened to switch my jobs 4 times in different environments. Similar, so when I got married to a family, it was a different setup altogether, different traits or environment altogether. So people were really ruthless while probably, expressing. At the same time, they were very appreciative. So it's a complete irony which I couldn't digest for a while. But now I think of it, and I'm very happy that I confronted these people 20, whatever, 15 years back. So today there are certain situations in my life I'm able to handle them better without adding any emotions to those situations. So I'm like, okay, fine. He chose not to support me. That's fine. People are there who will do that because of their XYZ reasons. So it's an external factor. I cannot push somebody to do certain things, but I'm happy that I could develop this kind of attitude because I confronted set of people in my life 15 years back. So I'm very happy about it, though it bothered me a lot when I tried, adjusting with that kind of environment. But yeah, it's nice. In office also similar thing happened. So initially I was, when you're young, you give a lot of time, and my profile was more of analytics and more of intellectual. And later on, around COVID time, it became a little operational and mechanical. And I was really feeling that, what is this? It's not productive enough. What am I doing to my, skill sets? But then I settled down, and I had certain situations to handle. So when I reflected, I realized I am the one who chose a little lighter profiles. So it's okay. As of now, the situation requires you to stay focused on something else. So here you can take a break. Your intellectuals are not going to rust. So it's okay. You just keep up. Later on, probably you can come back. So I can, it was a nice reflection when I looked at those slides. Thanks.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing. I mean, I picked up courage to look at your own self, take responsibility for your actions. I saw courage to look at others, their unhelpful patterns. And that sense of when you said, yeah, they are doing what they're doing because of whatever reason. I can't change it. That's a sense of compassion, right? They're just accepting that, yes. But to accept, we first need to acknowledge this is what is not happening. We need to try. And then if we can come to that space, what I love where you didn't just stop at that, because you can just be resigned. What's the point? They're not going to change. You stepped into gratitude saying, what can I do? Like, how do I choose to live my life? And that is our sense of agency. That is where growth truly happens, to say, this is not just an obstacle that's holding me back. I can choose to become who I am. That is a choice I have. Yeah.
Right.
Great. Nilofer, I'm just like, you don't have to say anything, but I'm just curious to see where you are at, what's coming up.
I think, in different situations, I'm leaning into each of these attitudes. So triggers around, say, food or body issue or money, I'm leaning more towards courage for myself and realizing that it's something that I can personally address. Triggers related to relationships with family or spouse, I'm looking more at compassion. Not to judge them, not to hold them accountable for something that maybe I need to work on. And other systems related issue like career or, dealing with climate anxiety or dealing with economy and, worries around that, those things, maybe it requires me to lean into the third attitude. So yeah, I think I'm just living with that awareness that in each of these situations, when something is making me react, what inner work do I need to do, and what do I need to lean towards to respond? So that's the state.
Amazing. Yeah. I loved hearing that. So what you've done is you've almost expanded this, saying that this is like a toolkit that is available to me. Like, just like my fight, flight, freeze were a set of reactions. In terms of response, I can choose, do I want to address? Do I want to let go? Do I want to give time? And these are the attitudes. What attitude is going to help me right now? Is courage going to help? Is compassion going to help? Is gratitude going to help? So then again, there is choice that is available, and we can see what's going to help in that situation. Yeah. Sudeep, what were you going to share? Unmute.
So that means I will say that for me it is the compassion and gratitude that is what kind of drive or has helped me. That means gratitude about life is happening for me and not to me is a huge thing. To me, that means it is a huge area of transition for me. That means I don't think there are many situations I went on living thinking life is happening to me. And I will go back and say, "God, this is not right, this is not right." Now, again, looking back, then I say, no, that means that transition and probably a lot of what we have done together over the last couple of years has helped me in that, and really appreciative, deeply appreciative of that. Because one of the things that I realized that it is not conscious. When that transition happens, it just happens. And you just understand that it has happened. So you cannot consciously, it is not like building your biceps. It is just not work that way. So that itself was a learning that it is thing. And compassion, I think, and to me, this is the whole truth that has kind of happened for me, or I feel more and more, is that at the end of the dust, at the end of the day, we are just a speck of dust hanging on a sunbeam. This whole thing all things that we are talking about, right? So we don't need to worry about who is ruling which country, who is fighting what. If I can get up in the morning and do something meaningful for somebody, then I have done my role. Because at the end of the day, that person is as equal, as important or unimportant as I am. Because in the scheme of things, it is the same. So I can make a difference. I will try to make a difference, even if it is just by praying for somebody. But don't need to really worry about anything else. It is meaningless. That when people spend, that is the sad part. That means today all the media and everything spends so much time about things that are completely meaningless. So, for example, all these elections happening all over the world, and they spend all the time, but they don't talk about the people who are actually making a difference on a daily life for people. And that is where we get caught up in. So if we can just push that away and say, I will remain in this space, I think that is helpful for all of us. That means just keeping that realization. Trust me, that means Trump is no more powerful or less powerful than I am. It is that realization, because at the end of the day, we are all in a speck of dust hanging on a sunbeam, nothing else.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing in that other perspective. I think what you're doing is we talk of creating space and time and zooming out a little bit. And what you've done is you've really, really extrapolated that if you were to zoom out like massively, right? Just that in space. And likewise, sometimes it helps to do that in time, that right now this seems so big. 10 years later, what consequences is going to be, right? When I'm not there, all of that. So just creating that spaciousness itself is so helpful. And what I also want to say is, like, we may each arrive at very different answers. For someone, that sense of space may say, okay, I don't need to engage with it, let go. For someone, creating that space and time may actually say, I want to do whatever it takes, right? And so all of those are fine as long as we're coming from a space of groundedness in ourselves, and with the world around, not from a place of fight, flight, freeze, and, an unsafe space. And I think also just sharing, I want to reflect back what you were saying, this a lot of this thing happens subconsciously. All of these frames, we are all used to making meaning of life. Most of the meaning of life we started making as young children, very small children. So it wasn't even a conscious process. We have internalized some of these patterns in what we have seen around us, whether it's judgments, whether it's, array, why is life happening to me? All of that. So those patterns have been formed unconsciously, subconsciously. Today we have a choice, right? Is that working for me? Do I need to pause? Do I need to re-examine? And that is like a conscious muscle that can get built, right? You can choose to say, okay, if you say, for example, gratitude is what I want to step into, it means every time a challenging situation comes in life, just asking myself, how can I use this opportunity to grow? Instead of why is this happening to me, right? What could be the good here that I'm not seeing? So that is the muscle building, right? If I'm getting into the judgmental mode, what is the other perspective here? What can I see differently about the other or me? And that is that continuous muscle to keep building. And then it becomes a default at some point of time. But that's where the habit building is important. So we are nearing the end of our time. I will stay back also for any more discussions, thoughts, questions, but I want to honor our time. And in that mode, maybe just invite you to go inwards again. So we have talked a lot. Oops, I unmuted myself. I was going to mute everyone so that you can take your time with you. Just inviting you to go back into your breath, back into your body. Just letting all of this settle in. Putting the conscious thinking aside. Just being present to all of you. And see if you want to pick up any current situation that may be life for you, that you may want to look at. Anything. It can be in any aspect of your life. And so just visualize that current situation. What's happening? Where's the outer or the inner conflict? The confusion? Noticing what's happening in your body. If anything shifts in your body as you say that, as you acknowledge that. And just breathing out and consciously relaxing your body. I'm going to invite you to try out, like you try out new clothes, just 3 different perspectives and see if something pops up for you. It may or may not. But as you look at this situation, can you try the lens of courage and say what unhelpful pattern is contributing to this situation? It could be yours or the others, or both. What is the pattern that we're repeating here, which is not helping right now? It may have helped earlier, not right now. The situation isn't getting resolved because there's something that we're stuck in or the other is stuck in. I now invite you to try on the lens of compassion, of saying, what is a more complete view, a wholesome view outside of the judgments? Yes, the judgment, it doesn't take away from the judgment. The judgment is rooted in some truth. But if there's a judgment or a belief something that you're holding on to about yourself, about the other, what might be a more expansive view be? Where you can trust, not fear, the intention. See that the other or we are not just who we perceive them to be. And as you breathe out, I invite you to try another lens, another set of clothes. What's the opportunity here? To learn, to grow, to thrive. What's a completely different possibility you could step into? Courage, compassion, gratitude. And maybe one of these questions opened up something for you. Wonderful. If it didn't, that's also okay. Just checking with yourself, what's one question? What's one lens that you want to stay with? Giving yourself time after the session also, of courage or compassion or gratitude. And gently, I invite you to come back into the space. I'm leaving the chat box open for anything that you'd like to share. You're taking away, what is staying with you, your way to complete this. So the chat box is open. And audio is welcome also. Feel free to unmute and headline something for us. Yeah, Sudip.
So one of the things, and probably this is a conversation for uh, another time, but just want to kind of put it. One of the realizations that kind of seems to be happening, I don't know, you have to tell if that makes sense or not, is that sometimes you have challenges or fear or anxiety about something that which is completely, and then you have a reaction of that in something which is completely separate or completely different. So it may be something which is to do with your, I'm just telling, health, where you are worried or something, and it is having a reaction on your work or your relationship. I'm kind of trying to see that. I have just a sense that probably there is something there. I'm not understanding, but it is something that I want to understand and explore that whether
It's a very, very powerful inquiry that has come up. Because we think, yeah, chaha, like life is going to work in rigid boxes, but actually nahi hota hai. So things spill over, right? So even what was said about response, that it is optimal arousal and it is appropriate for that situation. When we're in a reactive space, it may actually be other things that are coming out in completely different spaces too. So it's a fantastic, very, very powerful inquiry that's opened up for you. And I think just holding and staying with that will be wonderful. Thank you. Nilofer is saying, leaning into an attitude of gratitude that I get the opportunity to do the things I love and find value in. So much to be grateful for. Yeah. Thank you. Anyone else? What's the lens that you want to take away? Questions that you want to stay with? Perspectives you want to have? Akshat.
So, yeah, I think Garima, you're always known for these golden nuggets. So the one that I've taken from this session today was, I just love that phrase. You said life's not happening to you, but it's happening for you. And I think that is like my total takeaway from this. And that, I mean, I'll explain how. So, I've heard Sadhguru say, responsibility is the ability to respond. And, the Brahma Kumaris have their own way of, how you need to respond. It's a similar kind of messaging. And आप गीता का ज्ञान ले लो कोई भी अच्छा सत्संग anything which is of value, they're all trying to tell you not to react but to respond. But the truth is, as a human being, at that split second, that microsecond, to process your emotions and immediately say, "Abhi na mujhe respond karna, react nahi karna," is very difficult. It is extremely difficult.
Yes.
So you do fight or flight or freeze or fawn or whatever these things are, and now we know what these terms are called. Some of us are doing the work, trying to figure ourselves out, trying to connect with childhood trauma and how our patterns emerged. And I've read so much about these anxious attachment styles and avoidant attachment styles. And
Yeah.
there's this Dr. Ramani character who talks brilliantly about concepts of borderline personalities and narcissism. And there was another on her podcast recently, they were talking about a lady who wrote a book on toxic productivity. That also came up earlier in the that we keep ourselves so workaholics is actually not a good thing. It's a coping mechanism. We are trying to run from underlying feeling in the subconscious. So हमें लगता है कि यार बहुत मेहनत करी है तो बहुत अच्छा कुछ कर लिया हमने, but that's not true. You need to sometimes take a step back. But I think, I mean, coming back to that, this is probably for another session, but I take back those phrases. I mean, I was in that kind of when you told us that I kind of just visualize it. I was like, maybe this is the phrase I will take in that microsecond on how I respond and not react. That this
Wow.
life happening for me and not to me. So if this person's reacting in this way, it's happening for me. So how can I grow? And in that realm, I don't have to fight. I can use a response, which is trying to be compassionate with, there may be something underlying trauma within them, which is why they are reacting in this way. So I can be compassionate and, and express gratitude that this is my opportunity. So I think I just love that the way it was put. And yeah, that's my biggest takeaway from this session. So thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I think it's something I also came across, and those words have just now become imprinted. And like you said, in that moment, sometimes it's hard to do that because fight, flight, freeze are built in as immediate survival reactions. But the more we can ground into it, becomes like a muscle, building that muscle, settling into that energy. Fight, flight, freeze are grounded in fear. And this whole perspective of life is happening for me is grounded in faith. It's grounded in trust. And the opposite of fear is faith and trust. So fear to aayega, it's a natural part. But the more we cultivate this, then it starts becoming, it comes maybe sometimes it comes months after a situation, then it comes days after, then starts coming, one day after, and then it starts coming in the moment also. So thanks for sharing that, Akshat. And yeah, that would be my invitation to all of us. I think this just I was amazed. So actually, I want to like firstly just thank all of you because there is so much depth to this work. So I was like, yeah, 90 minutes, like, kya hoga? Nothing can happen. But just hearing all of these perspectives and seeing the work that you're doing, the depths that you're bringing into this conversation, I have been blown away. So thank you for like a very, very enriching conversation. It encourages me to do more of this short bites. Um, and yeah, just encouraging us to keep trying out, like building this muscle of courage, compassion, gratitude. The whole choice is available to us. We need not only fight, flight, freeze. And even if we do, it's okay. They are built for our survival. So to have compassion for us also, we will resort to fight, flight, freeze. It's okay. The choice is when it comes into my awareness, now what do I choose to do? Now, how do I choose to work with my underlying thoughts and emotions, the needs that are unmet, the fears that are getting triggered? And yeah, that's a life skill to build. I This is also what we do in the Vichaar workshop. I'm offering it in Bangalore in person in December, but I'll also be offering an online batch. So if some of you are interested, let me know. I'm in that process of deciding what timings to keep so that East Coast, West Coast, and Singapore or ye wo sabka, we can figure out some solution. So if you are interested, let me know because I need to take that decision also. So I'd love to factor in those of you who are interested in doing that in mid-Jan after the New Year starts.
Yeah, mornings on weekends would be nice. Online.
Mornings. Huh. Okay. So others also just DM me your preferences, then I can like collate those also. So yes, thank you so much. I am going to stay back here, but we will formally bring the session to a close and best wishes.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think, Garima, your closing remarks were very valuable. Like, you literally summarized the entire session in like 3 to 4 sentences. Like, yeah.
Bye, Sudeep. Yeah, I think that is the core of it because all reactions are based in fear. Fear ki kya dawa hai? Faith, trust. Whether it's trust in the universe, whether it's trust in myself, whether it's trust in the other person, somewhere we just need to anchor our trust. And that is also what Bhakti Yoga is about. It is in love. It's grounding our energy in love and trust and faith. So kisi the object doesn't matter, but to ground in trust, to ground in faith is what matters.